Hi everyone, I'm Kadambari Sahu. I'm the head of design at Valilab. Design Inspire is a web series of passionate, innovative, and young inspiring designers. The web series dive into their passion, inspiration, and what makes them go. It's an effort to understand how they are navigating their career path and how they are investing their creative energies. We believe hearing their bold moves and inspiring stories will ignite interest and inspire the next generation of budding designers across the globe. So let's go forward. Hello everyone, welcome to Design Inspire. Our today's guest is Deepak Mallya. Deepak is a full stack designer and a creative technologist with over 7 years of experience designing physical and digital products. While pursuing his master's, he co founded the Tyre Collective, where he invented a device that helps capture tire wear emissions, the second largest microplastic pollutant in our environment. Previously, he co founded and led product design at Treemouse, an award winning strategy and research consultancy in India. His work has won many international recognition, including the Fast Company, the IXDA, and many others. They've also been exhibited in the institutions like the Saatchi Gallery, Dutch Design Week, Consumer Electronics Show, and Imperial College. So, hello and welcome, Deepak. How are you doing today?
Hi, thanks for having me. This is quite exciting.
All right, let's go forward. So let me introduce you to the show format. The first part would be a presentation of your choice where you would be sharing with us your thoughts, your passion, inspiration, anything. And the second part is a talk sort of between me and you where we will converse about your design journey. So let's go forward. We're very excited to hear your story. Over to you, Deepak.
Cool. So I'll just quickly share my screen.
Sure.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deepak. I'm an interaction designer and creative technologist, and I design the meaningful supporting roles for technology in our lives. And I'm really interested in how to take innovation outside the lab and into the real world. So my relationship with design started with finding something better than my preordained path to engineering, being from Bangalore. And I did my undergrad in product and interface design at Srishti. I worked in Berlin for a while and then came back, worked in various big tech companies for a couple of years, and then co-founded Treemouse with my far better half, Nishita Gill. Uh, Treemouse is a research and strategy consultancy in Delhi. And we're basically working with industry leading companies to transform healthcare, fintech, and EVs in India. I then moved to London to do my master's in innovation design engineering at the Royal College of Art and Imperial College London. In London, I co-founded the Tyre Collective, which is a clean tech startup that designs circular solutions to mitigate tire wear, which is the second largest microplastic pollutant in the environment and a major threat to our oceans and healthy cities. I also co-founded AI Yesterday, which is my youngest initiative. It's an experimental collaboration with the Oxford Internet Institute, and it is an online publishing platform that aims to bring practitioners and theoreticians together to embrace what journalism and academic writing excludes on issues around AI. And we've also sort of created an AI co-writer, which also sort of responds to prompts and writes its own editorials. So that's quite exciting, and I'll be sharing that soon. So my talk today is called "Radical Ideas for a Better Tomorrow," and it's an idea that I've been sort of thinking about for a very long time, and it all starts with the idea of better. So what is better, and what does better mean? Is it better user experience? Is it better products, better systems, better life, or a better society? How do you, or how does anybody, or how do we as designers define better? I'll give you the example of the plastic bag. It was invented by a Swedish engineer in 1959, and it was his intent was to save the planet. Bags were developed as a better alternative to plastic bags, which were considered bad for the environment because at that time they thought forests being chopped down was a bad thing, still is. However, now we know that single-use plastics is one of the biggest threats facing the world's seas, with marine plastic set to outweigh fish by 2050. So better is a very powerful word. It is used to sell the agenda of any entity, whether it's good, bad, or anything in between, from companies to politics. So what is good today could be bad tomorrow because everybody wants a better future. So as designers, we are responsible for what we create as better because as Julian Bleeker says, designers live in the future and through our work, we are pulling the present up to us. Um, and so whether it's digital or physical products, services or fashion, we create what society consumes, and it is our responsibility to be as mindful and thorough as possible when we innovate. So how do we design better? So these are some of my reflections, some of my projects, experiments at designing better solutions for people in different ways. So everything starts with a compelling story. Designers are visual storytellers after all. Stories are the most compelling ways we connect with each other. So for example, I'll give you an example of the project I was involved with British Airways to imagine the future of flight 100 years from now. And we sort of took up the topic of sustainability because airlines face a massive sustainability challenge, environmentally and economically. So we explored how airline ecosystems could change by adopting new strategies and technologies. Um, Recent developments in synthetic biology have made the design and production of biologically based systems more precise than ever, from algae-powered homes on the top right to textile-based dyes from bacteria on the bottom left, and even electronics and chandeliers so on the bottom right. Um, these developments show great promise for designing a sustainable future. And so working with experts from NASA Jet Propulsion Lab, Imperial Bioengineering, and Airbus, we came up with a concept called Aerium, which imagines a future where synthetic biological systems are integrated seamlessly with electromechanical ones on board the aircraft. Giving rise to a new industry called bioavionics, which is a group of suppliers that builds onboard aviation systems that will change the way we experience flight, offering sustainable solutions for air, energy, and water on board. This seems fantastical, but we were amazed as designers at how crazy science can actually be. So we designed a multi-layered cabin structure that focuses on three systems: hydration, energy generation, and oxygenation. So the first is a biopolymer coating on the exterior structure of the cabin. This was inspired by a desert beetle in Namibia, which sort of attracts water on its body. And this responsive material harvests moisture and condensation from the clouds for onboard gray water use, allowing the plane to potentially start with less water and then harvest water in the clouds. So this helps it reduce energy and fuel consumption. So this was presented as a section of the fuselage with the hydrophobic coating. You can see on the bottom right. And the moisture on the surface sort of trickled down, collected in a reservoir underneath. The second layer is a computationally generated skeletal structure that minimizes weight while maximizing strength, saving fuel for each flight. So embedded in this generative structure is an energy efficient synthetic chloroplast layer extracted from algae. And so it's like a solar cell where, like plants, it converts sunlight into CO2 expired by passengers. And this process also generates energy naturally. So this clean air and electricity can be sort of generated through photosynthesis. So the oxygenation part we represented as a life-size body panel that you see on the left to demonstrate the energy generation part of the thing. And then we also designed a 3-cell cabin light module that is on the top right to see how we could sort of show the concept of biology working with electronics and mechanics on board. So this was a very exciting thing for us. So we wanted to visualize the possible impact of these technologies working together across scales. And we wanted to so we grew oxygen generating microalgae. We actually did this on the top left, if you can see, and integrated them with the scale prototype of our arch. And at the same time, we experimented with bioplastics and super hydrophobic coatings and all sorts of crazy technology. Basically, we want to demonstrate that the present is just as fascinating as the future. And the cutting edge today will be commonplace in the tomorrow. So this project kind of taught me that, so we all know this cone of designing futures and the way we think of the present and the preferred futures and things like that. But there are kind of drawbacks to this model. It sort of shows that we're situated in the present with just one vantage point and looking to the future. It doesn't allow us to change the present, and that is where change is needed. So I find this model by the artist Alexander Daisy Ginsburg to be very interesting. Reality is messy, it's plural, there are multiple realities coexisting, drawing from the stories of the past, imagining stories of the future, and both influencing the state of the present. I think a great example are your Instagram stories. You have like really like unrest happening on one side and a very complete different reality just one swipe away. So so against this messy backdrop, I want my work to sort of tell stories that are honest. I want to tell stories that capture the imagination and influence the present. So which leads me to the second sort of better that I'm interested in is our love-hate relationship with technology. What does it mean to build better relationships with it, especially with machine intelligences? What role do designers play when designing with AI? Paolo Antonelli says that designers stand between technological revolutions in everyday life. We see and hear the spectacle around AI every single day. And so I wanted to sort of cut through that spectacle and see how you can design more inclusive applications for it, because better can be more down to earth. So iCatcher is an intelligent camera trap for conservationists that uses on-device machine learning to mitigate human-wildlife conflict. So this project kind of started in 2018 as a sort of germ in my head when I volunteered for the tiger census. This was a man-eater that had to be killed because it was injured by a trap and could not hunt and turned to humans as easy prey. Many animals like this were electrocuted, poisoned, poached, beaten to death because they just strayed into human settlements searching for food. And they were killed because forest officials hadn't been notified, people were panicking, and they just couldn't act on time. So working with conservationists from Imperial College, from Zoological Society in London and the Wildlife Trust of India, I tried to understand the challenges conservationists and forest officials faced in every day in maintaining and safeguarding our relationship with the wild. They have to mitigate relationship between locals, some of whom are monetarily incentivized by poachers to track and trap animals. Agriculture and mining have sort of led to habitat loss, especially in some areas of the south. And animals often find themselves in villages, leading to fatal clashes. So, and forest officials have to monitor these huge areas of land, which is very time consuming and it's very hard, like a very complicated cat and mouse game. And there's pretty much no way of knowing where these animals might stray or when they might come into the village. So I wanted to design a solution that extended their senses into the wild. What if conservationists had eyes and a mind in the wild? So this is a quick video that I've made of my project. And maybe you can have a look. Oops. There you go. So iCatcher is a system that basically uses long-range radio signals to sort of send SMSs when it detects a tiger in the forest. And I'm sort of taking this forward now with the Nature Conservation Foundation to design an early warning system to prevent human-elephant conflict in Hassan in Karnataka. And so this sort of project gave me a glimpse into the opportunities we overlook very easily, to be really creative and to find opportunities for technology to create a positive impact and in areas that really need innovation. So finally, I would like to talk briefly about my process. I am a firm believer in interdisciplinarity. I think the concept of the lone inventor in the shed only goes so far when coming up with ideas. And the only way we can truly bring ideas to life is through interdisciplinary collaboration. And secondly, I really believe in this concept called the funnel, which is where we sort of bring down and sort of generate ideas in huge quantities and test and validate and find and sort of work with these concepts to find what could be the best way of representing something. And I think as designers, we need to sort of give ourselves up to that. And so I'll tell you what the funnel means a little more through our project, the Tyre Collective. So just to sort of briefly give you an idea of what the problem is, the tires wear down every time we accelerate, brake, and corner, and these particles are a stealthy source of air and microplastic pollution that was previously never researched. Nobody really thought about it. It accounts for up to 50% of particulate emissions, making it the second largest microplastic in our environment, and 1.8 million tons of it are generated across the US and 500,000 across Europe. And now tire wear is set to increase because EVs are heavier. They're about 25% heavier and they have more torque. So which means the future of vehicle pollution will not come from the tailpipe, but from tires. So just to sort of give you an idea, here are samples of tire wear that we tracked, that we sort of calculated and collected by tracking buses and cars in real time for 24 hours. So the box on the left, the X26, is the longest bus route in London, and that's the size of a coconut, and that's just one day. And TfL, the public transport in London, has 9,000 buses. So I'll just let that sink in for a second. So now that we had a problem to kind of solve, we wanted collaborators, and that's how we used the funnel for the first time. So we emailed 55 people across 3 colleges, across mechanical engineering, material science, and aerodynamics. 32 people responded, but then they ghosted us. 25 people responded further and invited to chat. Some of them gave us their 2 cents and said we were crazy, and then they said, okay, get lost. 15 people then still showed interest, and then finally ended up working with 6 people. So once we had those collaborators, we had to get to making and prototyping. So we built this rig to sort of mimic a road and a tire skidding. And then we went to work. We sort of made a lot of experiments, adhesives, vacuums, HEPA filters, Van de Graaff generators. We even spent some time trying to make a sustainable tire, which was the most ridiculous idea ever. But then until we discovered this was a kind of breakthrough. So you can see the tire particles sort of sticking to this balloon that was charged by rubbing against a sweater. And this was pure coincidence, and it wouldn't have happened unless we went through a funnel. We sketched out 400 ideas, discarded the impossible, crazy stuff, conducted over 50 experiments, 42 of which were failed because experts said it's crazy, it's not viable. 7 ideas were invalidated due to space and aerodynamics constraints, and we identified 1 final POC. Even in that, we sort of made different typologies, different form factors, different mechanisms, and then finally we came up with a working prototype that sort of shows how it works. So you can see how the charged particles stick to only a few plates and not the others. So this is really fascinating for us to see. So working with collaborators in aerodynamics, we identified the ideal position of our device in the vicinity of the wheel because it's a very turbulent space. So how do you fit it without destroying the car or the device itself? And working with material scientists, we identified proper materials, how the best use of electricity and energy efficiency in the car, resulting in this sort of prototype for us. So we received a patent on our technology, which is more efficient than vacuuming, more active than ordinary sort of HEPA filter technologies, and it has a storage mechanism that you can change very conveniently. And so we're now working with the public transport companies to sort of develop that further. And so we wanted our system to be circular as well. So once you collect this, we're able to sort of separate it out and put it back into new tires through a new material process that we've innovated as well. And since the launch of our project, we've sort of built more partnerships, built more people that we want to work with in government, in industry, and we're growing our network as well. And this sort of work has generated a lot of attention because interdisciplinarity is so interesting. So just so in conclusion, I think the takeaways from my sort of presentation is define what better means to you. Tell honest stories. Take your ideas outside the lab and desk. In fact, don't sit at your desk. And try to sit outside somewhere. It's way more interesting. Reach out to as many people outside your discipline as possible. Work with people you want, whose skill you want. And there's no such thing as failure. And when in doubt, use the funnel. So thanks, and you can ask me anything now.
All right, that was really nice and very inspirational to see your process and how do you go about funnel and how you try to go about your process. So the next part will start with question and answer and a chat and a conversation.
Yep.
The most of the questions that today I'll ask you are actually collated by my team user experience group. So let's go ahead. I generally start with simple question asking most of the people because it seems like design is something like a stream where people don't know from their kindergarten days that, okay, I want to be a designer. So how did it start for you?
Oh man, it was extremely rebellious. It's kind of ironic for me. It's I wanted to run away from engineering in my 12th grade, but now I've ended up coming back and like falling in love with engineering, which is interesting for me. I just didn't. Yeah, for me personally, I wanted to do something where I was able to apply what I'm learning. Even in school, I used to love physics. I used to love science, but I hated reading them from textbooks. I used to love seeing things work, how they're applied. So it's pretty much started from there, and then it sort of grew up. And on the other hand, I used to draw a lot. So I think that sort of came that sort of. That's how I was recommended to design because a cousin of mine was in NID and she's like, okay, you draw well. Why don't you try design? And I was like, okay, let me try it. And yeah, it's you just sort of stumble in and then you fall in love with the discipline,
So what was your discipline? How did it start? Like which discipline you went to? What did you do there?
So I kind of I joined Srishti and my program was called Product and Interface Design. Back at that time, I think it's completely changed now. And for me, it was Srishti was very flexible, where it was very craft based at that time. So I told my head of department that I don't want to sit and like rub coconuts because that's like or bamboo or make things out of like whatever, because I want to do something else. And I had we had a lecture from David Quartieles, who was the founder of Arduino, and we had a project with them where they just gave us Arduinos and they said, figure it out. And I was like, what is this crazy shit? And like, I was trying to mess around stuff. And I totally fell in love with that thing. And I didn't know how to code. I hated, and this is when I was coming from 12th grade where we weren't allowed to touch the computer, even though I did computer science, and we had to write C programs in notebooks, Fibonacci sequence. I don't know if you guys had that. But yeah, we had to mug up computer programming. So that's when I fell in love with like working hands-on with electronics, with rendering, with technology, and so that's how I kind of create my own curriculum in Srishti to sort of call myself an interaction designer. So yeah.
And after that, what did you do? Did you straight away went to start Treemouse, or was there like a time before that as well where you practiced?
Yeah, so I think I was recommended to go to Berlin by another tutor who a visiting faculty, and who sort of introduced me to this place called the Deutsche Telekom Innovation Lab, which was run by a lot of people from the RC at that time, and that's where I've really found sort of opened up my perspective on what uh, design can do, design can be in sort of services, digital, physical products and stuff. And so I was there for about almost a year, and then I came back, and I was working in different companies in SAP, in Honeywell. But I always wanted to, I think what was interesting from my undergrad is I was exploring so many different things that by the time I was like trying to find my niche, college got over. And I was like, shit, I need to do something. There's no closure for me. And so I had to sort of, I had certain financial difficulties and things. So I had to sort of work for a while and then have enough sort of money to sort of go. RCA is not cheap in any way. So, and yeah, I wanted to sort of go to the RCA because a lot of my most inspiring tutors who came to Srishti, who were in Berlin and stuff, were from the RCA, and I really love the way they think and the way they sort of approached a particular problem. So yeah, so I kind of worked for like 5-6 years. I spent some time in NID teaching new media design, and then I started Treemouse with Nishita, who I met in SAP.
So, and how did you like? So, you co-founded a company, right? Treemouse. At that point in time, what were your thoughts? Why did you even start like a initiative of this order?
Yeah, this also comes from this whole idea of better. Like, I wanted to do something better. I wanted to do something more. There was this. I'm always driven by this idea of how do you make something better. I guess it's an endless pursuit. There is no finality to it. But it's in like I wanted to see how you can work with people in better ways that aren't constrained. How do you find ideas that aren't limited to within a particular industry? I wanted to go wide to a certain extent, and then go deep in a particular project.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what kind of drove me into Treemouse, sort of established that as a practice maybe.
That also is like a some of the projects in Treemouse also fetch a lot of recognition. Do you want to talk about any particular project that you've worked in there and which was quite inspirational?
Oh, so I think one of my most interesting projects was working with Bajaj FinServ, which is I think now one of the most profitable sort of NBFCs after HDFC Bank, and working with them was really challenging and interesting. Like we were working with a marketing team, and they were a really driven team. Like I really like working with people who challenge your ideas. Like it's like you come in and you sort of create this design or this idea, and they're like, what is this doesn't make sense, like our user is not like that. And then you have to go and like convince them, and then they have different mental models, you have different mental models, and then you have to go and actually prove and convince what you're doing. So I kind of enjoy that fighting. And so I think it was really interesting to sort of work with these different teams, with these different stakeholders across different business verticals, and sort of create. So we designed their front end sort of portal and the customer experience and the design strategy. We were partly responsible for breaking up some of their products into more digestible and more strategic initiatives to sort of touch customers at different segments. So this came out from a lot of like back and forth, a lot of fighting, so to say, and in the end, you're just that satisfaction of working together with these people was I think the most inspiring for me. And then that sort of led to Bajaj being like having huge amounts of growth over the past, I think, 5-6 years, at digital growth, not just physical, not going to a store. So I think that was a big sort of thing for us.
So you're like second or third, you have initiative that you have co-founded, right? One was
Yeah,
Streamer, then you have Tyre, then this AI yesterday, right?
yeah,
These are the
yeah.
so is it like something that is which is intentional, or is it just like you try to how do you go about this?
Yeah, it's I guess it's maybe I don't know, maybe it's an addiction. I think it's a problem. I need to kind of think about it. No, I think there's these sort of respond to um different intentions in the kind of areas I want to explore as an interaction designer.
Mhm.
And these are sort of opportunity areas or things that I've sort of identified, and I want to sort of work with different people on these areas. So, for example, AI yesterday came from a thought of, again, like there's AI as a way, as a technology in the hype cycle. You can use it for whatever you want it to be.
Mhm.
You can call it bad, you can call it good, you can do whatever you want with it. So I wanted to sort of start not just working hands-on with it. I spent 2 years working hands-on with the technology, but I also wanted to work with theoreticians on it, because on the one hand, during my research phase, I would come across a lot of theory related to AI, ethics, all that kind of stuff. And then on the one hand, you see practical work, industry related work happening. So I was like, how can we get these people to talk? And so the Oxford Internet Institute, the University of Oxford, is a very theoretical place.
Mhm.
And so I sort of I met
Guys, is it from my side or is it?
like nobody reads them, and how do you sort of bring this back and into practice? So yeah.
We just kind of lost you in between. You said that
Oh,
Oxford is a, yeah, I think there was some,
sorry.
I don't know, it was, no, no, it's okay. Was it, I don't know if it was from my end or yours, but can you repeat that? So my question was like, so yeah, you were talking about the AI yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so AI yesterday was basically came from my sort of thought of looking at AI as a technology and how people sort of use it for whatever purpose they want it to, whether it's good or bad or anything in between. And so for me as a practitioner, like I've done a lot of projects hands on with AI, and I wanted to. But during my research phase, I'd read a lot of theory on it. So I wanted to sort of bring this theory and practice, like the theoreticians and practitioners together, and see how you can engage in discussions and debate on it. So that's why I sort of approached I met this girl called Maggie McGrath, who's from the Oxford Internet Institute, and we sort of started talking about it, and she was like, yeah, as theoreticians, they are just publishing frameworks and theories around AI, ethics, all that kind of stuff, and some of these frameworks, again, they're in their own bubble of how do you implement these frameworks in industry. uh, and so I was like, okay, there's a major gap here of how do you sort of bridge this gap between theory and practice. And I, from a very personal point of view, also wanted to sort of write more on AI. So yeah, it came from a selfish and a more collaborative sense, I guess. Yeah.
It's very honest of you, I should say, but
I tell honest stories.
so, was this like part of your curriculum, or was this just like overall collaboration that you just wanted to have, and then you went ahead and you had it?
No, this was totally outside college work.
Yeah. And was Tire Collective of that sort too?
No, Tyre Collective came from college.
Okay.
It was so we have a group project sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and so I wanted to work with these four people um, who were really, they had such interesting skills that I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to sort of gain for myself. So I was like, okay, let's get together and see what we can do, and this sort of uh, project seemed really challenging for us. It was super complicated, almost impossible and ridiculous as a problem space. And so we were like, yeah, that sounds perfect for us. Let's try it out. We're engineers, designers. Let's see how we can go about doing it.
You
So
do
yeah,
so many things. How do you balance your, like, how is a day in your life? I would really want to understand because there's so much of things that you're doing. So how do you go about doing this?
yeah, it's hyper efficiency. Hyper efficiency. If I show you my laptop right now, it's yeah, it's hyper efficiency in terms of time management. How do you like you really budget your time in different ways?
Mm-hmm.
How much time can you budget for a particular instance? What are your priorities? What is P0, P1, P2, P3? What are the dependencies? Whether it's a client project, whether it's like Tyre Collective work, pitching, grant funding, all that kind of stuff, or AI essay stuff, which is like it's going to happen slowly. So you budget and you find the time in your day. I guess I'm not a very. I think my housemates here say that I don't sleep. They're worried about me whether I sleep or not. They say, oh, man, your light is on at like 3 in the morning, and are you okay? So I'm just like, yeah, it's fine. I was just working. There was like something I got carried away with something, but it just comes from this sort of fascination with what you kind of want to do. But yeah, it's you have to be really good with your time, and I learned that the hard way. In fact, I think 2016 or something, there was literally nothing I was making or nothing I was producing. So I kind of learned that I'm not going to think about things happening later in the future, but just produce, put something out, see what happens, and then change. So yeah.
That's interesting that you've said that. Like one of our another guest who came to the show also had like a similar idea. He said that he would go on thinking for like a lot of time, and then there's a lot of anxiety that builds up, right? If you're not
Hmm.
making and all. So he said that the best thing that he could do is just start building something. And that's
Yeah,
why
yeah,
he does that every week, every like so he has a schedule of his own, but yeah, he keeps building. So
yeah. Like it's all said and done. I think there is no better satisfaction when you see something work and you see something that you have made that challenges your assumptions.
mhm.
Uh, I think like it was just during the Tyre Collective, like we all had. So I was a designer. My friend is an architect. My other partner and another guy is a mechanical engineer, and Shibon, who's the so Hugo's a mechanical engineer. I should blame them, not guys. Hansen is an architect from the US.
Yeah.
Hugo is a mechanical engineer, and Siobhan is a biology and researcher. So they like we had constant arguments because we as designers have like all these other ideals, and so we were trying to make like something and prove it to them,
Mhm.
and they would try and make something and prove something to us. And you can't argue when something works in front of you, when it shows and demonstrates your concept.
Yeah.
So that's why prototyping is so important. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Working collaboratively always has this kind of things. Like whoever has ever worked in team knows that there's a lot of viewpoints that happens, right? And
Yeah.
then there's a lot of debates that happens, and there's a lot of discussions. At this point of time, traversing and making sure that your voice is heard. At the same point of time, you're taking points. Is there like a framework or any points that you have that you think that should be taken care of when you're, working in groups and
Yeah,
collaboration?
I think one thing is at least working with people from different disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, for me personally, coming from a design background, it's really important for me to do my homework before I go into these meetings. Who are these people? What are their like? If it's like, okay, I'll give you the example of our project where we had to read their academic papers because they won't take you seriously if you don't like speak their language, so to say. So uh, you always gain that trust by saying, oh, we read your paper and we found this very interesting, relevant to our project. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, this is how we did it. And then they start giving you more interesting ideas and thoughts. So you speak as a designer, you speak those languages. I think it's very important to and like, in all honesty, I kind of, it's kind of cringeworthy when I see designers who don't speak engineering languages, where they come up with, like, you need to empathize with the guys who are building this stuff also. So and I'm not saying that you get tied down by engineering. That's not what I mean. But you need to speak those languages to connect with people, to sort of build synergies with them. So I think that is very important when you are sort of thinking about it. So and that doesn't mean that you don't teach them about design. I think that's very important. Some of my best projects is, like I said, when they challenge your design and you challenge their engineering, and that's how sort of prototypes come about. So yeah, that's most fun.
So you started your, as an undergrad with product and interface design, right? If I'm correct.
Yeah.
So, you might have, like, people have typecasted most of the designers as people come from aesthetics, coming from aesthetics and all. So how did you break that boundary and come off, as somebody to be taken seriously in terms of, can add value to the collaboration?
This again, this is a space that you only show by making, or you show by prototyping, you show by how you can make an impact, how you can make a difference. Whether it's UI design, like I think UI or I'm not saying UX, UI design. I think it's always a back and forth, like, oh, you can do this, you can do that, you can try this. But there's always, like, when you show that X is tested and people have responded this way, you build a prototype, you show it, then it's you're building a case. You're like a lawyer in a way. Like, how do you build your case?
Yeah.
How do you sort of show that you can't like go against it? It's so compelling. That's how you build your story. And so I guess it's just through building, you're constantly making stuff. So
yeah. And the other part that I want to ask you is, like, you started with, again, I'll go back to that product and interface design, but then you traversed like a lot of boundaries, right? And this sometimes take, a lot of efforts, not only efforts, but sometimes courage also, because you always feel like, okay, this is a new field, might not be very comfortable. So how do you get yourself to work on things that you don't know?
Yeah, I think dealing with ambiguity is challenging. It took me a lot of time and effort to break those preconceived notions, and it's always there. Like, you always have those preconceived notions of in any project. So it takes, I mean, I think for me, it's firstly, you have to sort of fall in love, or at least be interested in the domain, or the topic that you're exploring. So for us, like, it always starts with an opportunity space, not with a particular technology, or not with a particular output. So for example, iCatcher was more about looking at wildlife conservation. So it came from a space of, like, okay, how do I intervene here? These guys are facing so many issues. How do you sort of how can you how do you sort of design these interventions? The Tyre Collective came from a space of microplastic pollution. You're seeing it everywhere. You're seeing all these things happening. How can you sort of build solutions for it? And for me, it's like we have this whole habit of, like, as designers, naming our files as final, and then final, and then final. There is no finality in design. If you see, especially in UI, that's the best part. You're constantly changing UIs, because there's no one right answer. So for me, it's just like, okay, I'll make something, I'll fail, and then I'll move forward. I'll find something else better to do. So it's always, so you're always learning from these things. So when you leave those inhibitions of, like, doing stupid stuff aside, then you have nothing to lose. So you just jump in, ask those stupid questions, come across a little idiotic, but then you find some interesting things that nobody has ever thought of. So that's when you like say, okay, I'm actually intelligent, you know.
So people use like transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and all those terms. Why did you choose to name yourself as full stack designer or identify?
Yeah, oh man. So this again comes from engineering, full stack developers. I was like, oh, I can be a full stack designer also, because like for me it is that idea of speaking different languages,
Mhm.
speaking languages of the humanities, or of
Mhm.
people, of users, of
Mhm.
sort of empathizing with them. So a human-centered approach, but also understanding how you can build those solutions working with engineers. So actually getting your hands dirty with technology, with code, with uh, well, I can't do hardcore like back end kind of stuff, but I can do front end prototyping, not like industry ready stuff, but yeah, I can build. So it's, for me personally, I wanted to be a person who can work across the spectrum, and it came from that intent of taking ideas out of the lab. So you build these prototypes in a place, but then how do you, to create impact, it needs to leave, it needs to go out, it needs to be in the real world. So, and real world has different constraints, so how do you adjust for those constraints? So that's where that's how it sort of came about.
Coming your journey with entrepreneurship, right? Like I've seen you have, as we talked about, that you've already done, like this is your third initiative that you're doing. And it takes more than just being a good designer or good any of those creative persons, right? There's a lot of things involved, planning and then execution, and also as we were talking about public speaking. So do you
Yeah.
want to talk about like the importance of how to communicate in design a little bit for people who are just starting out as entrepreneurs maybe?
Yeah. I think communication and confidence can sell. You can. I mean, I think we've all seen all the Wolf of Wall Street. You can sell a turd to somebody if you communicate and come across confident, and sell it the right way. You know. Uh, I think for me, it's about how do you communicate an idea as what is the core essence of your idea. It takes a long time. It sounds very easy to sort of communicate, but it's very hard to really cut through all the stuff. Like you saw in my project, we had to do so much work to distill it down to one line. Like it's so hard, but it only comes through repeated iteration, repeated failures, and sort of bring that about. um, and so I think for me, it's communication as a designer, I think is more important sometimes, or is as important as the design itself. Sometimes the work itself uh, may not be able to speak for itself. So how do you communicate it? Or maybe you don't even have the work to show, to speak to show somebody. So how do you sort of show it to them in like 1 minute, 2 minutes? How do you capture somebody's attention in 5 minutes? So so you have to develop that knack. And I think in the RSA for us, we had like all our presentations, every single presentation that we had was, you're given 5 minutes, whether it's a 6 month long project, whether it's a 2 week project, whether it's a 1 week project, you're given 5 minutes. That's all you have. If you can't finish in 5 minutes, you fail. Like and you're constantly thinking about what is it you're trying to do, what is your project, what is the problem you're trying to solve, how you're trying to solve it, uh, how does it impact people's lives. So it's very, like, you break it down into the very bare essentials, because that's pretty much all you need to sort of tell people.
So when you're pitching these ideas, right,
Mm.
crazy, new, all these ideas that generally designers come across. So do
Mm.
you have like your compartments done? Like how would you pitch your ideas as in 15 minutes, 5 minutes, or something? Do you do it time based? How do you go about looking at how to create those narratives?
Yeah, I think so what's interesting is that we this sort of presentation is very different from a designer presentation, where
Process.
yeah, there's a lot in terms of process, there's a lot in terms of what you discovered, how you did things, what are the problems you solved. But when you're presenting to an investor, when you're presenting to a client, they don't know about design. They don't care about design. Are you solving my problem? What are you doing? Like, are you giving me money? Where are you generating money? What are you doing? That's pretty much all they ask for. Like, what are you doing? Like, how is this going to make money? And so for us, I think that's how we sort of came across. Like, we start off with the problem. One, like 30 seconds problem, 30 seconds solution, how we designed it, what we did. 30 seconds the system, the overall how we fit into the system. 30 seconds for the team. They're not investing in your idea, they're investing in the people behind the idea. That's also very important. Because you can have a brilliant idea, but if you don't have the people behind it, then it's not worth it. And then you have your business side of things, like your money and the sort of generated ecosystem, your valuation and things like that. So you go into the business part of it. So you have to really break it down into those small chunks.
You remember we were talking about that we as designers we have to speak a lot of languages, and specifically if you are going to make any impact into this world that we all want to as designers, then we have to speak a lot of languages. Do you want to talk about the polyglotness that you have developed these days?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's what makes us. I mean, that's why I really like. As Indians, we have to speak so many languages, you know, and that I think that gives us a little bit of an edge to sort of adapt. And you can see that there's I did another project on I made a sort of voice assistant that is able to understand mixed speech, because in India we speak with like Hindi and English mix, and like you have your English and you have your Kannada, and like for us, like back home in Bangalore, I would be switching between Kannada and Hindi and English, and like all the bad words and all the good words and everything together. And I'm being very formal right now, but in informal situations, there's a whole mix of things. So how do you as I think for us, it's a natural tendency to sort of learn those languages, and I feel. I mean, everybody says mathematics is the language of physics. So everything is a particular way of thinking. It's a way of communicating, even engineering for that matter. Like when you show something, when you develop something, you sort of connect with their idea, their work that they're doing, and you empathize with what they've done, and then you sort of you use engineering and the work they've done as a language to connect with them, and then you get stuff for what you need and to serve your purposes. You generate those relationships. So that's and for me as a facilitator, as a designer, I think that's very important. Because design is inherently collaboratory. There's craft where you are working hands-on with stuff, but it cannot work on its own. So yeah, so I think that's equally important.
So we know that, you know, for inspirations, it's best not to be in the, you know, just in the studio, go out, talk to people, you know, and do a lot of things. But pandemic has actually did the opposite for us. You know, it has actually cramped us down into the studios, and it has made us a lot more isolated thanks to technology, but still it is there. So how are you navigating this new normal?
Oh man, yeah, it was tough. It was really tough in the first month. I think so. I finished my masters. I graduated during the pandemic. I'm a pandemic graduate, which is and I think so. It was really tough mentally on everybody here. Only half my batch graduated. A lot of people took leave of absence. It took a toll on everybody, because like for a few weeks I was like waking up and I was like, wait, I'm not going anywhere. I have nothing to look forward to. What is, like, where do I go? I'm just sitting in my room here and trying to work, and like you get very like distracted. But then like you are resilient. You have to sort of adapt, and I had to adapt very quickly. I'm still in my room, and it's very messy right now, so that's why you have this weird background. But but you adapt, and I had to finish my project, and I wanted to. They said we could adapt a project to a digital project or a sort of visually rendered project, but I wanted to sort of make something physical. And so I went. I mean, we are so well connected that you're, in a way, digitally you're still present with people. Although I am like now speaking to you, and sometimes in some of the presentations, Zoom is like speaking into the void, but you kind of adapt to that. But yeah, you become resourceful as a designer. You have to be resourceful. You have to sort of do that jugaad. You have to try and um, uh, adapt. So as a batch, whoever was working, we got together, pulled in money, bought a 3D printer. We all sort of built a schedule to print all our work. Uh, I built so I have a backyard, luckily, so I was able to sort of make a paint booth to like get people to come and like paint their stuff. So you adapt. We've been through. I mean, I personally feel that like we've all been through lots of hardships. Everybody has their issues as a society and things, but we've adapted. We've been so resilient as a society. So we can't make we can't, but we have to look past that and not use that as a way of not moving forward.
So what makes you go? I want to understand that. Like, what really motivates you?
Oh man. Reading a lot, finding a lot of like being really interested in a multiple different in multiple different topics. There's the whole argument of being a specialist or a generalist, and what is it like everybody expects you to specialize in something. But I think the world needs generalists as well, because you see somebody has to connect the dots. Somebody has to say that, oh wait, I can take this from this thing that I saw in mechanical engineering and put this together with like chemical engineering, and then something can come out of that. And so who puts those things together? Because these guys, like a lot of people sort of specialize in one particular thing, but there has to be some way of connecting those dots together. So yeah, just being interested in reading all sorts of topics, from like fiction. I'm right now reading Philip Pullman's Dark Materials, to biotechnology, genetics, to machine learning. These are all these are all things that have some sort of connection with each other, whether temporarily, like through a concept, or through actual like physical bonds. But there's some, you can interpret them in different ways and connect them. So yeah.
Okay. Now, I want to ask like some advice that you would want to give to young and budding designers, somebody who's either graduating this year or people who are thinking of coming to design. I'm sure it's very difficult. It's not this year specifically is not really easy. So what would be your advice to them?
I think so for people graduating now, I would say, I mean, it's a very tough situation. We're all going through. You're not alone when you're going through these tough situations. The whole world is going through these tough situations. So reach out to as many people as you can. I think for me personally, a big support was in the first few weeks when I was so like, I didn't know what to do. I reached out to my friends. I reached out to people I hadn't spoken to in a long time. And so you build those relationships very well. Friends are always there to help you, and they're like, yeah man, shit, I also don't know what to do. And then you're like, okay, so you can build those things. So from a personal point of view, if you're just graduating, don't worry about it. Reach out to your friends. You're not alone. And things will get better. I mean, once you reach rock bottom, the only way is up, So so think about it that way. It can't get any worse. And people getting into design, I would say, don't. I think it's a very hard thing to do, but don't think about solutions first. I feel I have a lot of people thinking about um, sort of careers that they want to do before they've sort of explored things, uh, which I kind of, which was one of the biggest deterrents that for me back when I was trying to, before I joined design, this whole, I was really deterred by the idea of engineering in India, because there is only one, like the primary or the majority was you have to get into tech, you have to get into IT. And I know friends who are chemical engineers who got into IT, and I was like, why, you're a chemical engineer, you can do so many things about it. So as a designer, if it's very hard, but and of course it's not the easiest way, uh, but explore different areas of design. Think of it from a problem solution point of view. um, Reach out to people if you're stuck. Reach out, not just your tutors, but reach outside your school, to sort of understand how people work. What, like, when I was in NID, I always wanted to like see how, like, Ahmedabad is such an interesting city. There's an IIM, there's an IIT, there's an NID, there's a SEP, there's a NIF, there's a NIRMA, there's a whatever shit. How can all these guys work together? Like, how do you get that to happen? So yeah, so it's as a designer, I think you need to sort of work outside. So yeah, I guess that's what I would say.
So, Deepak, thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts today, for the amazing work that you are doing and you continue to do. We want to confer upon you the title of Inspiring Young Designer. And this is like a small token from our side, our love and appreciation towards your work and you as a person. Thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts today.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed seeing my work as much as I had fun building them. So thank you so much.